The sixth one, the man offense. And again, this is what my father taught me, and this is what he calls his offense. He's really a shotgun. He's gap scheme like us, has always been big, quick game, vertical kind of team, but he calls it the man offense. And what the man offense is get the man the ball on offense. Whoever your man is, whoever your guy is, how do you get him the ball in space and as many times as you can to make him be the best player he can be? Um, if your best player is your outside receiver, if they got their best corner on them, how do you, instead of saying, "Oh man, we got to get somebody else, he's covered," how do you get that guy 8 to 10 touches a game, right? If he's your running back and they're low in the box, how are some different ways that you can look at getting these guys the football different ways, but staying within your offense, but also, man, expanding, having fun. Where do these guys where do they fit? Where does your man fit? If your quarterback, so he's a great thrower, not a great runner, well, man, I got to fit my offense around his arm and not his, or vice versa. But man, so many of us do run our offense and do what we do. It's more offense based than it's personnel based, and I think the greatest ones have both and kind of mesh those two together. And then on defense, hey, you got to read the man on defense, right? There's some people you cannot block, right? There was a DN this year in the playoffs. Man, he was a stud. It didn't matter what we ran, he was going to blow up the block. He was making a lot of the plays. So, man, we had to decide, hey, are we going to run away from him? Are we going to run at him? Are we going to read him? Are we going to double team him? And whoever their best players are, a lot of times it's not blocking the guy, it's reading him. Whether he's a safety, he's a DN, maybe your RPO, maybe you, man, put him, he's the right corner. Well, you put your weakest guy on the right, spread him out, and do everything to the left. Sometimes it's as easy or simple as that. But finding their best players and deciding what you're going to do with their man, right? And sometimes that could be two, three, four players, right? And sometimes, like I said, it's reading the person. And in our offense, how do we have flexibility to do all those things? If their man is the linebacker, okay, how are we reading the linebacker? What are we doing against him that makes our offense the best it can be, and try to take him out of it as best we can? And then adapt both your offensive and defensive man, which I just talked about. I mean, how do you adapt? How do you mesh those two things and still be able to do what you do, not be doing too much, right? That's a thin line of doing too much, taking stuff out, and where do you find that middle ground of, all right, we got, these are what the kids know. Now, how can I formation? How can I do things to get our players the ball in that offense? And here are some examples of some players I've had just kind of in the last few years, um, that were my best players. Keaton Reese, he's about a 245-pound, 250-pound quarterback, probably 260 to be honest. Totally different than some of the quarterbacks that I had before, throwers. This kid was a downhill power. Now, he had a great arm, great play action arm. He's actually a great athlete. I shouldn't say great, good athlete, but it really changed who we were. He was a downhill kind of guy. Hank Beatty, he's a kid that came in as a freshman, was a quarterback his whole life. I knew he's about 5'10", great athlete, probably one of the fastest kids I've ever had. But he's probably a receiver in college. Now he's playing. Now he started some and played some at the University of Illinois, and has played a lot this year, at the slot. And that's what I knew he was. So eventually he was going to be the quarterback, but until our quarterback the year before, that was a senior when he was a sophomore, who was also a 1AA kid that went to Western, Clay Bruno, we put him at receiver, until it was his turn. And then a kid, Zach Grant, 2011, a kid that had 132 catches and 2,300 yards receiving, is still all-time number one in the state of Illinois history. He had a great quarterback in West Lunt, but it was a kid, an outside receiver. He didn't get one D1 scholarship at first. He ended up walking on at the University of Illinois and also playing and starting kind of at the end of Lovie Smith's tenure there. But man, 5'11", probably a 4'8", 40. But man, he was a dude. And how do we find ways to get him the football And obviously, we found 132 ways to try to find him. So here are just some examples of man plays. So man, our slot right here was our probably our best receiver. Ended up being would have been a quarterback. This is our big quarterback last year. Like I said, he's about 2'6", just a great kid, and just ways utilizing his arm and utilizing his skill as a quarterback. So yeah, talking about man, here was the game against my father, play a semifinals game, and this was this kid had been playing. This is Hank Beatty. He was playing quarterback. We brought in the 260-pound quarterback to get him the ball here on the left side, and just a different way again during the game. And we do a lot of two quarterback systems sometimes, especially if I feel comfortable with two. But if especially like in this case where Hank um, was kind of run a sluggo route here, and again, just try to get our best player the ball in different ways. It's hard at quarterback; they'd load the box against him, and so um, just finding ways in a game to get him the ball in different touches. And then in the same game, moving him, he was also a kid that man, we really didn't want to put. Or here's the receiver state championship game against St. Rita. Again, we had moved him around. He had been slot most of the game. We liked our matchup with this kid on the outside, kind of same route, kind of a sluggo route. And again, I think we went up two or three touchdowns here, and he had three touchdowns in the first half catches, I believe, or in the game. And again, just we moved him around different spots. Again, we didn't want to put him at running back all the time. And so we would bring him in bunch condensed sets and have run plays where we could get him the ball. So just a little shovel toss here, but still running our power GT scheme, a gap scheme. Instead of putting him in the backfield, running back, keeping him a receiver, keeping a 3-by-1 set, but getting him running play concept from the receiver position. Next one. And then obviously, like I said, he was always a quarterback growing up, and so his senior year he was probably quarterback 80% of the time, I would say. And so just here, man, how in the quarterback in our running game, how do you get the quarterback to football? What kind of running schemes? What different ways can you involve him in the running, right? And so quarterback runs. And I think when you have a running quarterback, that opens your offense up so much. And now you're playing 11 on 11, and it totally changes the game, in my opinion. As an offensive coordinator, it becomes so much easier. If you got a statue back there and you can't run, a lot of times you're playing 10 on 11. And so, um, I think with his legs here, and man, that at quarterback, his senior year, we became very more quarterback run heavy, which we always have been, and I love it when we can, like I said. But again, it's just our counter, just off of a quarterback counter in our system. So. So you can see a lot of those ways, and that's a very obviously small example of ways we found to get our players the ball. Here was 2011 state championship game. Wes Lent, who was a freshman, started at Oklahoma State, ended up being the starting quarterback in Illinois. Richmond Burton, this team we were playing, was a very double wing, very run heavy, wing T, whatever you want to call it. I think they only threw the ball 2 times, and we threw the ball about 80% of the time this year. And again, that's Zach Grant. He had 132 catches. This was one of the few formations that he was single coverage. So I tried my best. It wasn't something I was planning on doing a ton. And we get this in our crazy formation talk that I do. But man, basically you're spreading the linemen out with receivers, and basically you got 7 wide. But this was the one time, this was one of the few formations where he was single covered. And so again, I probably should have stayed in longer than I did, and more than I did. But anytime we could get him single covered, we tried it. Again, this is another time, man, where and he was actually double covered here, but this is just a great example. This was right before the half. And just hey, even sometimes, um, man, even if the look doesn't look good, we told him, hey, man, you give this kid a chance, and the quarterback was good enough. And that's not something you don't want to throw in double coverage, but you also got a linebacker on him, a DB turning his back. Man, give the kid a shot. He's a better athlete, better receiver with the ball in there than those guys. And he was a great high point kid, right? So we threw a lot of, and not jump balls, but fades. And are you a team that, man, you throw the deep ball in the garbage can, you put it on their helmet more? And this year we were definitely, man, put it on his helmet. But this is a great example of, man, let's throw it up and give our best player a chance. What you also saw in those is, man, our offense, you saw in 2011, I mean, we were probably 75% pass. Um, and the year I had 2 years ago, I had the 260-pound quarterback. We were probably 75% run. Man, both offenses, man, the plays were kind of the same. Man, we just did things differently. Formations were different. The things we did, we concentrated more on the pass than the run, maybe, or whatever it is. But man, those were two different teams because I had two different ways I called it because I had two different talent pools, right? In high school, we're going to find that 2011 team, I really didn't have a tight end, so we were almost all 10 personnel that year. Last year, we were, like I said, man, we'd have 2 or 3 tight ends, and so it just matters what year